and its congregations. And believe me, all of these are intertwined, and they relate directly to the state of the presbytery. The PCUSA and its presbyteries are experiencing their greatest threat since the Civil War. In all of its expressions, the PCUSA will look profoundly different in 5 years. And while the folks north of the Mason-Dixon line are experiencing less of this seismic shift, no one is immune. In some parts of the country, it is common to hear of presbyteries losing 5, 15, even 30 congregations, or the firing of all or most of the presbytery staff, or fears that presbyteries will not have the resources to sustain themselves. In Louisville, there are also significant changes occurring as they struggle to maintain funding and relevancy. And if we look at all of this from another perspective, some presbyteries have used these forces to help transform themselves into presbyteries that are flatter, that are focused on congregations, and looking for ways to inspire their congregations to grow. And this leads me to the local presbytery. The Presbytery of Baltimore is fortunate to be, I think, in this latter category. We continue to be a strong presbytery. Congregational giving to shared ministry will probably increase 5% this year over last year. We have no congregations at this time who wish to leave a Presbyterian church. And frankly, as I listen to my colleagues around the country, I feel profoundly fortunate and grateful for what we enjoy here. Few, if any, presbyteries are stronger or more focused on the ministry of Jesus Christ and the ministries of our congregations than we are. The Presbytery of Baltimore has evolved in significant ways over the past 10 years. We've worked hard at building relationships, and the relationships between congregations and the presbytery are far more mutual than they used to be as we seek to support and encourage and challenge each other in our ministries. We've agreed on a new vision, a new ministry plan, a new budget, a new staff design, almost by consensus. We've launched new ministry groups with far greater participation than we even dreamed or hoped of. As Terry has told you, approximately 90% of all of our congregations were in the first meetings, and most left enthusiastic about their future potential. And we've done this at the same time that we have strengthened our 3 continuing mission partnerships, given birth to a new partnership, and maintained our historic commitment to justice. We stand, if you will, on a mountain looking out over the Jordan River into a promised land. It is a moment of hope and possibility and expectation. And our existential challenge is this: will we seize the moment and accept the bold new future to which God is calling us, or will we be held captive to treasured memories and old ways of relating? So what is the future that beckons us? Well, this is where I want to come to the congregational perspective. Our future rests on a vision of thriving congregations filled with spiritual leaders who are engaged in a ministry of reconciliation. And the state of the Presbytery of Baltimore will be determined by the extent to which congregations embrace this future. Now, we do have reasons to be concerned about this vision and the future, and the congregations that are central to it. Theological pundits are saying we live in a post-Christian, post-modern, post-Christendom era, where people are spiritual but not religious, and where society no longer trusts but now distrusts the church. And I run into a significant number of people who don't believe that the future of the Presbyterian Church USA is important. It's a position with which I completely disagree. And yet there are daunting challenges. Our average age as Presbyterians is now north of 61. And half of Americans under the age of 30 have never been in a sanctuary, synagogue, or mosque. On our home front, statisticians tell us that the Presbytery of Baltimore lost 2,251 members since 2004. That is mind-boggling. I would let you know, though, that 10 of our congregations account for 2/3 of that loss. But congregations are also a source of good news. Last year, 32 congregations, almost half of our congregations, either gained members or held their own. Woods added 65 members last year, and 3 congregations, Central, Mount Perrin, and Frederick, have grown by more than 60 members since 2005. Mount Perrin, in fact, has nearly quadrupled its membership. Last month, tiny Barrowville Presbyterian Church received 10 members. They had 20 before them. And I might add, they don't have a teaching elder. Last year, 30 congregations also reported that attendance increased, or at least remained the same. Woods, Second, and Westminster reported growth of more than 15. In April, St. Andrews in Mount Airy broke ground for its first building. All of these are really significant accomplishments in this era. And all of these are examples of new growth as congregations who are engaged in the ministry of reconciliation. There is also an evident openness to the development of spiritual leaders within our midst. Our sessions hunger for things that are spiritual and for skills development. This winter, I sat down before church began, and I spoke with an elder. I asked how it was going as an elder, and he responded that he would not renew because his time on the session had depleted him spiritually. He had hoped that the elders would talk about things like spirituality, theology, the Bible, and all they talked about were the more mundane things like personnel, committee reports, and building needs. I'm pleased that some sessions are spending more time looking at the role and well-being of elders. For example, Christ Memorial and Prince of Peace have read Joan Gray's Spiritual Leadership for Church Leaders. But it's also clear that our leaders need to know more about strategic planning, marketing, stewardship, education. This effort on building spiritual leaders can help us connect with our neighbors and our neighborhoods by placing the focus of our efforts on those who are beyond the doors rather than those who are within. Many in the church talk about this as being missional. In his day, Paul invited folks in Corinth to take up the ministry of reconciliation, and our vision calls us to be apostles of reconciliation. This is a shift in many ways. It calls us to remember that it's not about us. It's not about the people who are already in the church. It's about others. And it's a stance that only a few congregations can currently manage. Christ invites us to enter into genuine relationships with people we don't know and who are often not like us, and to become friends with them and then invite them to become friends with Christ. Now, where is this being done? I saw it a few weeks ago when I participated in worship at Mount Perrin. I saw it as the choir stood to sing. Most of the choir members were first-generation Cameroonians, and they were dressed in Cameroonian Christian women's and men's fellowship outfits. But what struck me the most was that among them were also long-time Americans who were also wearing those outfits. And drums were the instrumental accompaniment. The folks at Mount Perrin had made friends with people who were different than themselves, and they were willing to change the way they did things to make new friends feel welcome. Mount Perrin, whose membership has quadrupled, shows all of us what can happen when we recognize that the church is not about us. Let me finish by speaking about what lies ahead. You've all been invited to participate in a ministry group. We believe that this will rebuild the connectional nature of the Presbyterian church, a core element of the early church. Luke writes that those first believers shared their possessions, gave to each as each had need. They devoted themselves to the teachings of the apostles, the breaking of bread, and the prayers. These groups provide a venue for this understanding of Christianity to be rekindled. And as such, it is a rare gift. It is much like the gift of the Spirit at Pentecost. As these groups begin to develop identity and ritual and purpose, it would be easy to simply reproduce what we have done before, but on a smaller scale. However, we cannot keep doing what we have done for the past 50 years. Now is the time to allow the Spirit to rush through us in the same way it rushed through those disciples, turning them into apostles. Let us continue to proclaim that justice will roll down like waters. Let us continue to care for the hungry, as Knox does most Friday nights, or for the homeless, as the folks at Hagerstown and many other churches do. But let us also realize that something dramatic has to change in the life of most of our congregations if we are to have the critical mass to do these things into the future. Let us find ways to become apostles of reconciliation, with the intent of becoming friends with others and inviting them to become friends with Christ. Let us feel proud and let us feel confident in who we are as Presbyterians and what we have to offer. Let's stop being cynical about that. And let's invite others to be a part of our church, to be added to our number, just as they were on the day of Pentecost. Given the challenges that each of us face, we may feel like the disciples felt on the day of Pentecost. Remember, those disciples gathered behind locked doors. They were huddled together. They remembered a bright past. They were unsure about the future. But an amazing thing happened. Filled with the Holy Spirit, those first disciples opened the door and they went outside. They went onto the streets. They made friends with people they didn't know, and in the process made friends for Christ. It happened 2,000 years ago, and there's no reason why it can't happen